General, it was a much shorter Farbrengen today than usual. The Rebbe finished the Farbrengen before 4, and the Sichas were also shorter Sichas. We will try to review the contents of most of the Sichas. Rebbe began the Farbrengen that this Shabbos is Shabbos Pashas Chayei Sarah, and this Shabbos is we're within the 3 days from Chav Cheshvan, which was the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab, which was just this Thursday. And this Sedra is Chayei Sarah. If we look into the Sedra Chayei Sarah, Sedra begins Vayiyu Chayei Sarah, and the title of the Sedra is Chayei Sarah. You can't have a title, the word Vayiyu. You can't have a title only with the word Chayei, because Chayei, the life of different people, is discussed in other Sedras as well. So that is why the name of this Sedra is Chayei Sarah, which means the life of Sarah. But the question arises, the name of the Sedra is Vayiyu Chayei Sarah, so what we're supposed to be talking about, obviously, is something that has to do with the life of Sarah. And as we go on to the Sedra, immediately as we go into the second pasuk, what do we read about Sarah's passing away? So how is it befitting that a Sedra like this should have the name Chayei Sarah? Obviously, the title of the Sedra is in contradiction to the contents of the Sedra. So the Rebbe explained that the Torah is telling us the life of Sarah, and that Sarah lived for 127 years. Meya Shonim, Ve'eschrim Shonim, V'sheva Shonim. And this was the life of Sarah, 127 years. And incidentally also, this is the 127th, this Chav Cheshvan was the 127th birthday of the Rebbe Rashab. So Chassidus explains, what is the inyan of Meya Shonim, and Eschrim Shonim, and Sheva Shonim? So Chassidus explains that this has to do with various levels of the Avodah of Sarah. Meya is the highest Madrega, 100. Meya has to do with the Sfiras HaKesser. Rotzoin and Kesser, as Chassidus explains at length, that has a shaykhus to the number of Meir. Esrim has a shaykhus to the inyan of Chochmah. It's explained in Chassidus at length. There's Esses Sfiros. Chochmah, from Chochmah, if we count from Vadam up, Chochmah is the 10th. 2 times 10 is Esrim. Meir is Kesser. And Sheva has to do with the 7 meters. So what does this mean? This means that the Avodah of Sarah was such an Avodah that she went through with her Avodah in all levels, in all Madregas, from the lowest Madrega to the highest Madrega. And Sarah, who was an Isha, and we know, as Chassidus stresses, based on Kabbalah, that the Madrega of an Isha is Sfiras HaMalchus. That means that the lowest Madrega, the lowest of the Sfiras, that means that she was Ma'ached. She was Ma'ached and Mekasher. She united all of the Madregas together. In other words, she brought together from Keser and brought it down all into Malchus. And this accomplishment of Sarah, the Rebbe continues, is such an accomplishment, which this wasn't only while she was alive, this was something which she brought down in something which is effective even after her passing from this world. The question now is answered when we're talking about the life of Sarah. And the question arises, how do we name this Sedra the life of Sarah? Chayei Sarah. At the time the Sedra tells us right away about the passing of Sarah, the answer is on the contrary. The Torah here is telling us about the accomplishment of Sarah, and this is her life. When we're talking about the life of Maseim Shel Tzadikim, the life of Tzadikim is their accomplishments. And the accomplishment of Sarah is what? That she was able to do the Avodah on such a level to bring down from the Madrega of Keser and bring it down into Malchus. And this is something which is left on further as well. Further meaning even after she passed away. After she was nifta physically from this world. As Chassidus stresses the great accomplishment that a tzaddik, and the great effect that a tzaddik has on the world even after he passes, imparts bigashmius from the world. Especially the Alter Rebbe Negeras HaKodesh explains this whole inyan at length, that after the tzaddik parts from the world, and the same actually applies to a tzaddik when we're talking about Sarah as well. After a tzaddik parts from the world, he still remains, not only still, but even yatir mi bechayei. The Alter Rebbe uses the expression, ishtakach yatir mi bechayei. He has a shaykhs to his followers and to his inyanim even more than when he was alive. When he was alive, there were the gashmiistic limitations. However, once he passed away, these limitations don't exist anymore. And Memele, the accomplishment and the accomplishment that a tzaddik accomplished throughout his life, this is something which remains eternal even after he passes away, begashmiyus, from this olam, after his neshama parts from the guf. And especially if we go further in the Chazarah, we take a read about Yitzchak, which is his mamish, the continue Yitzchak, and then later Yitzchak doing the Shidduch, which is his mamish, the continuation of what Sarah instituted. So Mimela, when we're talking about the life of Sarah is something which is an ongoing thing. It's not something which stopped after she passed away. It's ongoing through the avodah that she did when she was on this world, and not only that, it is continued in the same path through her children, through Yitzchak and Rivka, which this is also what we read about in the Chazarah. So Mimela, that's where we can understand why the Chazarah is called Chayei Sarah, because it deals with the real inyan of the Chayei of Sarah, something which remained eternally after she passed away, and which was continued and brought into reality through her children later after as well. Right after this inyan in the Chazarah, we come into the Chazarah, to what we have a shaykhs to the Chazarah. We read in the Chazarah the inyan of the Ma'aras HaMachpeil, of Avram, when he was in need of a place where to bury Sarah, and the details how he acquired the Ma'aras HaMachpeil. Actually, this was the first shaykhs of Avram getting something in Eretz Yisrael. Getting something with his ownership in Eretz Yisrael, this was the purchase of the Ma'aras HaMachpeil. Even though we read that the Rebbe told him, Kum his lech ba'aretz, it's an expression in the pasuk, la'ol kol ha'rachba, that he should go through Eretz Yisrael, through its length and through its width. So, Chazal say that by going through Eretz Yisrael, this was a kind of a kinyan which he made in Eretz Yisrael, because the Rebbe promised him that he will give it to him. But this wasn't given to him physically until generations later, when the Bnei Yisrael got Eretz Yisrael. However, where do we find that Avram got a part of Eretz Yisrael, which was his taka, owned by him, mamish, in the sense of bailus, in the sense of ownership? This was the Ma'aras HaMachpeil that he got. Talking about the inyan of the Ma'aras HaMachpeil, and how this expresses how Yidden have a shaykhs to Eretz Yisrael, the Rebbe referred to an incident which took place this year in Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe says it took place in Hebron. This is what we're talking about, Ma'aras HaMachpeil in Hebron. And it took place on Simchas Torah at the time of HaKovos, where there were people there, referred to somebody in particular, that proclaimed it not only in Hebrew, but proclaimed it in English. I'm sorry, the Rebbe didn't say English. The Rebbe said in one of the Shivim Lishonos, in one of the languages of the world, proclaimed and came out with a statement in public how Hebron belongs to Yidden. And in general, how Eretz Yisrael belongs to Yidden. Who has true ownership on Eretz Yisrael? It's something which belongs to Yidden. The Rebbe is the balabas of the world, as we learned in the first Rashi in Bereshis. And it is the Rebbe that took it away from Goyim, and the Rebbe has given it to Yidden, and it belongs to Yidden and it's ours. And the Rebbe was very appreciative of this individual who came out in public to make such a statement. And he had the pride to come out to make such a statement. And at the same time, the Rebbe says, let him also continue stressing other facts that have a shaykhs to this inyan. And this is, he brought out how Eretz Yisrael is a nachlas olam, is something which is eternally belonging to Yidden. Let him also bring out how every Yid is a ben yochid by the Rebbe. How dear every yochid is by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, every single Jew. And how every Yid is a nachlas olam, is an eternal inheritance to the Rebishter, each and every Jew, regardless on what level he is. As the Rebbe stressed here, we're talking how we brought out such type of a statement. To bring out such a statement, one needs the proper Ga'oin Yaakov. Yaakov means the proper Jewish pride, to be able to come out with such a statement. And when we're talking about Ga'oin Yaakov, we know that Yidden have various titles. Yidden have a title Yisrael, and Yidden have a title Yaakov. However, when we're explaining both of these titles, one opposing the other, Yaakov reflects how Yidden now are in a lower madrege. Yaakov meaning okev, a toe, a heel. Yisrael talks of Yidden in a higher madrege. Yisrael is composed of two words. Li Roish reflects Yidden, how Yidden are standing in a madrege of Roish, a head. So there's quite a difference between the madrege of Yaakov and the madrege of Yisrael. When we're talking about Yaakov, the Rebbe stressed, is composed of Yud Eikev. What meant Yud Eikev? That even when we're talking about a Yid who's in the level of Eikev, in other words, a Yid who's in a low madrege, still we tell him that the Yud is there. There's a famous expression, a Yiddish expression often quoted in the Siches, that every Yid has the Pinta L'Yid. Pinta L'Yid means the point of Yiddishkeit that's within him. It's explained in Chassidus at Lent, based on what Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, and it's explained and elaborated a lot in Mamorim, that every Yid has what it's called a Nekudas Hayadus, which means the same as the Pinta L'Yid, a spark of Yiddishkeit which is constantly there. No matter what type of a matzav a Yid is, this spark of Yiddishkeit is never extinguished. This is always there. And especially also the inyan of Yud has to do with the Shem Hashem, with the Shem of the Rebishter. Shem of the Rebishter is two Yud. The inyan of Yud reminds us on the Rebishter's name. Memela, we are told that even when a Yid is standing in a madrege of Yud Okev, of Yaakov is the inyan from Yud Okev, still this Yid has a shaykhs to the inyan of Yud. Mela, what is our inyan? What do we have to do? It is our inyan to reach out to every Yid and reveal within every Yid how he has the shaykhs to the Yud, that every Yid has this pinta Yid, and every Yid has a shaykhs to the Rebishter. And here the Rebbe says, if all this inyan really has to be done at all times, and especially this year, that this year is a year of Hakel. And the whole inyan of Hakel is what? Also to bring the message of the Yiras Hashem Elokeichem, that every Yid should become a God-fearing Yid, to bring Yiras Shemayim into each and every Yid. This is what Hakel is all about. And when are we extremely successful in doing such type of an Avodah? When this Avodah comes together with Simcha. When this Avodah is done in a mood of joy, in a mood of happiness, then we are successful in this Avodah. Then the Rebbe continued regarding Avram. Regarding Avram, it's explained in Chassidus that Avram is based, also composed of two words, is based on the concept of Av-Rom. Rom in Hebrew means high. Was meint das? That Avram Avinu, mitzad atzmoi, mitzad the level he was in, stood in a madrege of Rom. Chassidus uses the expression Seichel hanerlam mikol rayon. This is an expression which is often quoted in Chassidus regarding Avram Avinu, that Avram stood at the level of wisdom, at a level of Seichel, which is hidden from any other rayon, from any other thought, from any other thinker. In other words, Avram's Seichel was in an extreme high madrege. And here we are told, what did Avram do? Avram let himself down to each and every person, and instilled Yiddishkeit or godliness, spread godliness to every human being. Especially there's famous Gemara, the Gemara tells us based on the Pasuk, Vayikra Shom Avram b'Shem Hashem Keil Olam, that Avram called in the name of Hashem, publicized godliness, Keil Olam, the God of the world. So there's a Gemara, the Gemara says, Pasuk says Vayikra, he called. So the Gemara says, Al tikri vayikra, don't read it he called, read it vayakri, he made others call. In other words, Avram was not satisfied with the fact that he was aware of godliness. He was aware of the Rebishter. He came to a recognition that there's a Hashem, there's a Manig Lebirozu, there's somebody that's leading the world. This wasn't sufficient for him. He was Vayakri, he made others call as well. And Chassidus stresses also, Vayak, the pasuk continues, B'Shem Hashem, Keil Olam, God of the world. Could have said, pasuk could have used the expression, Keil HaOlam. Keil HaOlam would mean the God of the world, the Master of the world. When it says Keil Olam, Vasadop Pshat, so Chassidus explains at length, if we would say Keil HaOlam, it would mean the Rebishter is one thing. He is the master of Olam, he's the master of the world. When we say Keil Olam, it means that everything in the world is really godliness. The only thing, the Rebishter has dressed it in such a way that our eye can be fooled, and we see a world, and we can think that the world is going by itself. The truth is, what is the entire world? The entire world is Göttlichkeit. Everything is existing with the Dvar Hashem, and everything, not that the world is a Metzias Farzich. The world is, there's an Olam. And we say, Keil HaOlam, the Rebishter is the God von der Welt, he's the God of the world. It is not so. Chassidus, many pages in Chassidus on this concept. Pasuk says, Keil Olam, Avram Avinu's philosophy, what he spread amongst all people is how the world and the Rebishter is one. That the entire world is godliness. The only thing is we have to reveal it. We have to open our eyes. Our eyes have to be open that we should be able to notice it. We should be able to see it. So Mamela, this is the whole union of Avram. So the Rebbe is concluding here that Avram is really doing the same avodah as Sarah is doing. We're talking about Sarah. How Sarah was mamshich from the very high madrega of Keser and brought it down into Malchus. The same idea was the avodah of Avram. Avram himself was the madrega of Avram. Av also means the union of Chochmeh, Seichel, as Chassidus explains. And what was his Chochmeh? He stood in a madrega of Chochmeh, which was Rom, much higher than everyone else. And what did he do? He let himself down and reached out to publicize godliness and to bring godliness to each and every person. Just like his wife saw. Here we come to another union in this week's Sedre. The Rebbe continues, we have in this week's Sedre the shlichus which Eliezer was given by Avram to go out and find a wife for his son Yitzchak. So from this concept the Rebbe went into that we all have a shlichus. There's a shlichus which was given to all of us, which when all our neshama is coming, each and every neshama that comes down into this world, every neshama has its specific shlichus. And it is our job to make sure that we are accomplishing our shlichus, we're accomplishing what the neshama was sent down for. And the Rebbe touched it also. We find, Takeh, by the shlichus of Eliezer, we find that he had kfitzas haderech. What does it mean he had kfitzas haderech? A normal trip which normally would have taken X amount of time, he made it much faster. He went, where did he go from? He went from Avram. Where did he go to? Choron. What is the inyan of Choron? So Chassidus explains what's the inyan of Choron. Choron was the name of a city. However, it expresses that concept of charuin af, anger. Charuin af shaloilo. What does it mean? Choron was such a city which the way the people in Choron behaved, it brought about anger to the Eibishter. In other words, it was a city which was far from acting properly. Charoin af shaloilo. And what are we told here? That the inyan of Kfitzas Haderech is uniting the highest madrege, where he came from. He's coming from Avram. And what is he doing? Coming from Avram and going in a form of Kfitzas Haderech, coming to Choron. Was weißt das? The same idea. reaching out from the highest madrege and uniting it, reaching out to a low madrege, which is the Inyan of Choron, and bringing the concept of the house of Avram, what type of, we're just discussing what Avram was, bringing this concept into Choron. Later the Rebbe continued with explaining Rashi, as well as a Kutei Levi Yitzchak on the Zoyar, and also referring to a Rambam in the Shir Rambam. Regarding the Rashi which the Rebbe explained, is based on the Pasuk in this week's Sedre, which tells us about Avram's aging. In Kapitel of Dalet, Pasuk Aleph, the Pasuk uses the expression V'Avram Zokein, Avram got old, Bo Bayomim. V'Hashem Beirach es Avram Bakoil. So the question arises, what is the meaning of Bo Bayomim? He got old, verstehe ich. V'Avram Zokein. Was meint Bo Bayomim? Rashi doesn't say anything. So Rabbi says the Melamed in Chayda, teacher in Chayda usually would teach that what means Bo Bayomim.
What pasuk is that?
Kapitel Chav Dalet Pasuk Aleph. It comes into continuation with Avram Zoki. Avram Zoki means he got old. Bo Bayomim means yet older. Bo Bayomim should mean another step in age, older than Zoki. Bo Bayomim is coming into days, meaning coming into older days. Truth is, there's a question that arises that in last week's Sedre we have a similar pasuk. There's a pasuk that tells us V'Avram v'Sara skenim, that Avram and Sarah got old Bo Bayom. So the question arises, what does this pasuk here in Kapitel Chavdalet pasuk Aleph? What does this accomplish more than on the previous pasuk in last week's Sedre? And Rashi doesn't explain anything. So the Rebbe says, it seems as follows. The pshat in the pasuk would be, the first Avram v'Sara skenim, where the pasuk says that Avram and Sarah are getting old, that pasuk is talking before Yitzchak was born. So the pasuk is telling us Avram and Sarah got old. Then what happened was Yitzchak was born. So by Yitzchak getting born, this made them younger. As the pasuk tells us that Sarah was surprised, how will she be able to bear a child? Avram was a man of 99, Sarah was a woman of 90. At that age, that they should be able to have children, and they did have children, it was the brach of the Rebbe that they had children, so this made them younger. So Mamela, now the pasuk is telling us again, V'Avram Zokim Bo Bayom, that after that, don't forget now we are 37 years later, we're already after the Akedah. So the pasuk is telling us that Avram got yet older. Question, however, still remains, what's the taich Bo Bayomim? The Rebbe says we can't taich that Bo Bayomim should mean a next step in Zikna. After Avram Zokein, we can't taich that way. Why? It's a hard pshat, because if this would mean the pasuk, then the pasuk should have brought this at the very final stage of Avram and Sarah. Bamish, as they're about to pass, as Avram is passing away. Because the Torah is telling us, Avram Zokin, he's old, Bo Bayomim, noch älter far Zokin, older than old. If we are to learn that way in Bo Bayomim. When is a person older than old? This is his very last moments before his last days, the last period of time before he's passing away. Furthermore, the Rebbe says, we find a pasuk in Novi. In fact, this pasuk we said in today's Haftarah. Hamelach David Zokin, King David got old. Bo Bayomim. So the pasuk there also uses the expression Bo Bayomim. And there the pasuk can't mean that Zokin is one stage, Zikna is one stage, and Bo Bayomim should mean a stage later, because the pasuk is telling us that it was cold for David and he had to be covered with clothes, and still v'lo yicham lo, it didn't warm him. So obviously the pasuk is talking about the age of when David was a certain point to the age of David. So he was Zokin and Bo Bayomim. So we see that it's one Inyan Bo Bayomim. together with Zikna. Still, what does Bo Bayomim add on Zokin? Just like in the Haftarah we also find, the Torah tells us, Melech David Zokin, it's not enough. And the Torah adds on, Bo Bayomim. What means Bo Bayomim? The Rebbe says, it seems to him that the Pirush in Bo Bayomim would mean, just like there's an expression, Bo Babayis, somebody comes home. Bo La'esek, somebody is involved in his business. What means Bo Bayomim? He says it means simple. We see people, a child sees it as well. The child sees there are different people in front of him. And he sees that people are aging, and nonetheless, on some people, their age is showing more, and on other people it's showing less. Much if a person is 70 years old, there are some people that look their age, or look even more than their age. There are other people that not only don't they look their age, they look even younger than their age. Was macht das? It depends how they react to things during their life. If whatever happens to them during their lives has more effect on them, then they become older. I mean older not only in years, but it makes them look older. If they don't take it so much to heart to inyanim that are happening in their lives, then they look better, they look younger. If we're talking about David HaMelech, HaMelech David Zokin, he got old. But together with it, Bo Bayomim, his days, it was seen on him that he was an old man. Why? We look at David's life. David had a very hard life. David had a life with a lot of problems. Memela, when he came to the age of 70, he was Zokain, and together with it, Bo Bayomim. In other words, Bo Bayomim is a definition that explains that his age is taka obvious on him. It's taka seen on him that it's noticeable on him that he's an older man. For example, the Rebbe says, let us not go far. David's father was Yishai, and Yishai lived for 400 years. So we see that a person could live taka much longer, and it was by David, were together with his zikna, was the inyan of Bo Bayomim, so the Bo Bayomim affected him, that is why he was cold, and he had problems, and covering him with clothing did not make him warm. Why? Because it wasn't just zikna. It was zikna together with Bo Bayomim. Same the Rebbe's teaching means here. Va'avrom Zokin is one inyan. The second thing is Bo Bayomim. It was seen and noticeable on him, the fact that he was an old man. In other words, it showed on him the zikna. Could be zikna, and it doesn't show on the person. For what we notice, and the Rebbe says the child is aware of it. The child is well aware that there are many people, that there are older people, and nonetheless they carry themselves well, and they look young. So those people may have zikna, but it is not Bo Bayomim. Bo Bayomim means he came into his days. What's the pshat? He came into his days. His days meaning his life, his whatever he went through, he really lived it through. Bo Bayomim, he came into those days. Memela, when he came into those days, it is noticeable on him that he lived through various hardships throughout his life, and that's why it's noticeable on him. It could be seen on his face. Talking about this inyan, it says the same applies to people amongst us. Same inyan. Then the Rebbe is talking in a hira and a lesson which we can take from this whole thing. The Rebbe says, but why talk about people amongst us? And then question will begin that he may offend somebody, one who those who is he intending to, or those who think that he's intending to them. The Rebbe says, let's talk here on the Doyer HaMidbar. The Doyer HaMidbar is considered a Doyer Deya, a generation of wisdom. Very high-level generation, spiritually. It was a generation that saw constant miracles from the Rebbeinu. They went through Yetzias Mitzrayim. After going through Yetzias Mitzrayim, they were in the Midbar. They had the man. the manu, something which was an obvious miracle, daily on their tables. They were fed through the man, and the man had all tastes of every kind of food. A little bit mentioned, there's a pasuk, the pasuk tells us, v'taimoi, that the man had a tam, kitzapiches bidvash. This is an interesting thing. Dvash, we all know, means honey. And whenever we learned the pasuk with our melamed and cheda, the melamed never touched what sapiches means. And always the attitude of the melamed was, sapiches bidvash. But he asked, what's meant this? It's sapiches and honey. They never gave you a correct touch. What is the real meaning of it sapiches? But the fact is that the man also had a taste of its sapiches bidvash. So it really had all any kind of taste which a person just would have wanted, he had in the man. And you're talking about people that lived through such outstanding nisim, such great nisim, and at the same time, when these people sent the meraglim to Eretz Yisrael, and they came back with an opinion on Eretz Yisrael, what was their attitude, what was the response of the Yidden of such a deir deya? Their response was, Ein balabayis yochel lohoitzias kelev misham. They used an expression in the term of a mushal, in the term of a parable. Like the owner of the kelim can't take the kelim, can't take his vessels out of the room. This shows they meant that on the Rabbeinu Shalom, that the Rabbeinu Shalom kaviyachol will not be powerful to bring them into Eretz Yisrael. So it's a tremendous question. You're talking about people that in the day-to-day lives they are seeing nisim gluyim, obvious nisim from the Rebishter. Their entire existence is based on nisim. What are they fed with? Nisim. How are they existing through nisim? And here these people are coming to a conclusion that that ein balabayis yochel lohoitzias kelev, that chas v'shalom the Rebishter wouldn't be able to bring them into Eretz Yisrael. So it's a very obvious question. It's a very strong question. And the same the Rebbe says, we're talking to people nowadays, the same thing. People that see Nisim, and see Nisim Gluyim, constantly are fortunate in seeing Nisim, and nonetheless it comes to certain points in their lives when they're getting scared, and they're getting worried, and they are thinking, will the Rebbe be able to help them in their specific situations? The Rebbe says this is similar to the Deir HaMidbar. Deir HaMidbar seeing Nisim from the Rebbe, and then when it comes L'poil, when it comes to reality, and they're about to enter Eretz Yisrael, what type of a reaction do they come to? They come to a reaction of who knows if the Rebbe will be able chas v'shalom to bring them into Eretz Yisrael. Who knows if the Rebbe is that powerful? Same the Rebbe says, there are people amongst us that have the same thing. We see miracles, we constantly see miracles from the Rebbe, and then when it comes poil mamish, when it comes to rely on the Rebbe, we come to all kind of odd different types of thoughts, meshunadike svaras, all kind of different svaras, different ideas, and we are concerned, will the Rebbe be able to help us in this specific matter? We see the koyach of the Rebbe. Why think that way? Regarding the Rambam, regarding the Shia Rambam, Rabbi says today's Shia Rambam is a Shia Halachas and Rambam on an Inyan which there's a Maimah from the Tzemach Tzedek, which is already explained in Chasidus. Just to mention it briefly, it's regarding Shtei Ginois. There are two gardens or two houses, zu al gav zu, one on top of the other. V'hayerek b'intayim. There's vegetables that's growing in between. The question is, who has the ownership on the vegetables that's growing in between the ground floor and the top floor? Does it belong to the person living on the lower floor, or does it belong to the person living on the higher floor? This is the halacha. In other words, in Gashmis, in halacha and nigul.
What's it?
There are various conditions, depending who's closer and so forth. In the Ruchnias, Tzemach Tzedek explains that stay Ginois, was mit 2 gardens. This is Gan Eden Elyon and Gan Eden Atachten. The lower Madrega of Gan Eden and the higher Madrega of Gan Eden. Hayerek Beinei, what does it mean that there's a vegetable in between? There's something growing in between. There's something growing, that's the Inyan of Torah Mitzvahs, which a Yid is Mekayim. And by a Yid being Mekayim, Torah Mitzvahs, this brings him close to the 2 Ginois, this brings him close to the 2 gardens. And the more he gets involved into the Yerek, which is what's growing there, what's the need of growing? The need of growth in Torah Mitzvahs. The more he gets involved in that, this brings him closer to the 2 gardens. What do we mean by the 2 gardens? It means the two various madregas of Gan Eden Elyon and Gan Eden Atachten. Rebbe says he's speaking about it very briefly, because at length it's already explained in a maimah from the Samech Tzedek on this halacha. Regarding the Zohar, the Rebbe discussed an Indian. The Rebbe says it's an Indian that has a shaykhus to what we're talking about constantly. And that's about the Indian of Mashiach. Geula. And that is that in Svarim there are 2, in authentic Svarim, there are 2 different opinions regarding what would be the Seder of the Rebishter, what the Rebishter will do when he will take us out of Golus. Would it be V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael, that the Rebishter will gather the Yidden from all corners of the world first, and then he will give the Beis HaMikdash? Or will it be that the Rebishter will give the Beis HaMikdash first, and later he will gather Yidden from V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael? So in the Rambam, it is brought that first will be V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael, and then the Rebishter will give us the Beis HaMikdash. However, in Zohar, the Rebbe says there are contradictory places in the Zohar. Sometimes the Zohar says that the Beis HaMikdash will be before, and the V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael will be later. And sometimes he says that the V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael will be before, the Beis HaMikdash will be before, and the V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael will be later. So, how do we straighten out between these 2 Zohars? So the Rebbe explained it depends on what level we are talking. See, this a lot of times such an approach is taken. V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael means that the Rebishter will gather Yidden and bring us out of Golus. However, the bringing us out of Golus, the V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael could be on various levels. So there's let us call it like a phase 1 and a phase 2. So the first level of V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael, getting us out of Golus, this will come before, and then the Rebishter will give us the Beis HaMikdash. What's the meaning of Beis HaMikdash? Beis HaMikdash means a revelation of godliness. Afterwards, after we will have that, the Rebishter will uplift us a yet higher madrege, which this is also the meaning of V'yikabetz Nitchei Yisrael. After we will be brought up to a yet higher madrege, then we will be zeiche to a yet higher madrege in the union of Beis HaMikdash. Then we will already be more purified. Memela, we will be worthy of a higher level of Gilui Lakus, the higher level of Shechina, which is expressed through the union of even the Beis HaMikdash. But regardless whether it would be this way or it would be the other way, the main thing it should be soon and immediately that the Rebbe should take us out of Golus and put an end to the Golus.